Dawn of the Earth Shapers. The Ohio River Valley, a land of rolling hills, winding waters, and quiet forests. Today, highways cross the land. Farms stretch to the horizon, and towns sit where rivers meet. But long before all this, before steel bridges, before brick courthouses, this land belonged to other hands, other eyes, other minds. They were people whose names we do not know. They left no books, no written records, but they left something else. They shaped the very earth. Long before the first Europeans arrived, before the birth of Rome, even before the pyramids of Central America rose, the first mound builders of Ohio began their work. Around 3,000 years ago, a culture we call the Adena emerged. They were hunters and gatherers, yes, but also farmers, tending squash, sunflowers, and other native plants. They lived in small villages, often near rivers. Their homes were simple, but their connection to the land was profound. And when a person died, especially someone of importance, the Adena built. Their first mounds were small, a simple covering of earth over a grave. But with time, these grew, layer upon layer, sometimes for decades or even centuries. These were not just graves. They were monuments, links between the living and the dead, between the earth and the sky. Some mounds were perfectly round, others elongated. Beneath them, archaeologists have found burial chambers lined with logs, filled with offerings, beads carved from shell, blades chipped from exotic stone, copper hammered into gleaming shapes. These were treasures, yes, but not in the way we think of treasure. They were messages, gifts, for the journey into the next world. By around 100 BCE, the Adena were joined or transformed by another culture, the Hopewell. If the Adena were the first builders, the Hopewell were the architects. Their mounds were larger, more precise, more ambitious. They enclosed acres of land within massive earthen walls, laid out in perfect circles, squares, and octagons. And they aligned them with the heavens. To do this, they needed knowledge passed down through generations, watching the sun, the moon, the stars marking where they rose and set on the horizon. The Hopewell built a landscape that was both earthly and celestial, a reflection of the cosmos on the ground beneath their feet. But among all the earthworks left behind, one stands apart. It is older than the Hopewell, yet tied to their traditions. It is the most famous mound in Ohio, and perhaps the most mysterious in all of North America. High on a ridge in Adams County lies the Great Serpent Mound. From the ground, it is little more than a winding ridge of earth, about 3 feet high, perhaps a dozen feet across. But from above, the truth is revealed. It is a serpent. The body coils gracefully back and forth for 1,348 feet, nearly a quarter of a mile, ending in a spiral tail. At the other end, the head curves around an oval shape. An egg? The sun? A cosmic symbol? We do not know. Scientists debate who built it. Some point to the Fort Ancient culture around the year 1070 CE. Others believe the Adena began it more than 2,000 years ago, with later peoples reshaping it. What is certain is that the serpent is aligned with the movements of the sun. The head points to the exact spot where the sun sets on the summer solstice. Other curves mark the winter solstice, the equinoxes, and possibly lunar events. This was no random creation. It was a calendar, a compass, and perhaps a prayer. Imagine the scene 1,000 years ago. It is the evening of the summer solstice. The people gather along the ridge. Fires burn low in the distance. The air is thick with the scent of pine and wood smoke. A line of dancers moves slowly along the serpent's back, carrying baskets of offerings, shell beads, clay figures, carved pipes. Children watch from the grass. Elders murmur prayers in a language we will never hear again. The sun sinks lower, lower, and then at the exact moment it touches the horizon in perfect alignment with the serpent's head. The crowd sings. The earth, the sky, and the people are one. The serpent still rests here today. Its grassy coils have survived floods, storms, and centuries of human change. It has no voice, but it speaks if you know how to listen. It speaks of a time when the earth itself was a canvas, and the sky was the pattern to be followed. A time when the people of Ohio shaped the land not for profit or defense, but for meaning. In the next chapter of our journey, we will step deeper into the world of the Hopewell, into the vast geometric earthworks that stretch across Ohio, monuments that mirror the heavens, and mysteries that still defy explanation. Geometry of the heavens. The Hopewell people, masters of earth and sky. To the casual eye, their mounds might seem like nothing more than gentle rises in the grass. But from above, from the view of a bird, or perhaps the view of a spirit, they reveal their secrets. Vast circles, perfect squares, sprawling octagons, shapes so precise, so deliberate, that modern surveyors still marvel at them. These were not walls for defense. They were not enclosures for livestock. They were something else entirely, a bridge between this world and the one above. In central Ohio, in the city of Newark, lies one of the most astonishing of these creations, the Newark Earthworks. Once, they covered more than 4 square miles, making them the largest set of geometric earthworks anywhere in the world. Today, roads and buildings cover much of them, but what remains is still breathtaking. The Great Circle Earthwork, nearly 1,200 feet across, its walls rising to heights of 14 feet, surrounding a broad, empty interior. The Octagon Earthwork, connected by a long, straight pathway, perfectly aligned to the northernmost rise of the moon in its 18.6-year cycle. Think about that. It takes almost 19 years for the moon to return to the exact same position on the horizon. Yet the Hopewell knew this. They measured it. They built for it. Archaeologists call this alignment lunar standstill. For the Hopewell, it may have been a sacred moment, a cosmic heartbeat, marked not by the turning of the seasons, but by the great wheel of time in the sky. We can only imagine the ceremonies that took place here. A vast gathering of people from across the region, the sound of drums echoing between the walls, torches carried in procession along the long causeway, faces turned upward, waiting for the moon to rise in its appointed place. When it did, the people would have seen not just light, but a sign, a promise from the sky that the world was in balance. But Newark is only one chapter in the Hopewell story. To the west, along the Mississippi River in Wisconsin, another figure lies carved in earth, the alligator effigy mound. It stretches for hundreds of feet, its body poised as if in motion, its head raised toward the horizon. Some say it is not an alligator at all, but a spirit being from the Hopewell's myths, a guardian or a creature of the underworld. Though far from Ohio, the effigy shares the same spirit, art, astronomy, and ceremony bound into one. We may never know its exact purpose, but perhaps it was a place of initiation, or a boundary marker between the realms of the living and the dead. Imagine again, if you will. It is night. The stars are bright above the Ohio country. A group of travelers arrives at the Newark Octagon after many days on the trail. They carry gifts, obsidian blades from the Rockies, copper from the Great Lakes, shells from the Gulf of Mexico. They enter the circle. The air smells of burning cedar. Drums begin to beat, slow and steady. A shaman steps forward, his face painted, his arms raised to the sky. He speaks to the moon, to the spirits, to the ancestors. The crowd falls silent, and then, slowly, the pale disk of the moon rises exactly where the earthen walls have been waiting for it for almost 19 years. The precision of these works is staggering. Some align to the solstices, others to equinoxes, still others to lunar phases or the positions of certain stars. It is as if the Hopewell had turned the land into a great observatory, one that needed no stone, no mortar, only earth and vision. These were places of gathering, of ritual, of connection. They were living calendars, marking not just the passage of time, but the story of the cosmos as the Hopewell saw it. And so, across the Ohio Valley, The sky was mapped onto the ground, every line, every wall, every mound a reflection of the heavens. But the Hopewell's genius was not limited to geometry alone. They also understood the power of place, the way rivers, hills, and valleys could hold meaning as deeply as any star in the night sky. In the next part of our journey, we will follow those rivers and see how the Hopewell placed their monuments at the very gateways of the land. The river gateways. The Hopewell knew the sky, but they also knew the land. They understood that rivers were more than just water. They were lifelines, pathways, and sometimes boundaries between worlds. Across Ohio, you will find their earthworks placed not at random, but at carefully chosen places, often where rivers meet. For the Hopewell, these confluences were sacred, two waters joining, just as two worlds might join. At the meeting of the Muskingum and Ohio rivers lies the modern town of Marietta. Here, hidden between streets and houses, are the remnants of one of the most impressive earthworks the Hopewell ever built, the Marietta Earthworks. Once, this complex covered more than 150 acres. It was laid out in precise geometry, rectangles and mounds connected by straight, elevated pathways. One of its most striking features was the massive quadrangle mound, surrounded by 4 earthen walls with gateways aligned to the cardinal directions. From the north gate, a broad causeway led directly to the river. It was as if the earthwork itself reached out to touch the water. Some believe these causeways were ceremonial paths, routes for processions, where participants might carry offerings from the river into the sacred enclosure. Others think they were symbolic journeys from the water of life into the heart of the spiritual world. Further west, along the Scioto River, another great center rose the Mound City Group. Today, it is preserved within Hopewell Culture National Historical Park. From above, Mound City looks like a vast rectangular enclosure, its earthen walls encircling 24 mounds of various sizes. Each mound here held burials, but more than that, they held objects of astonishing craftsmanship. Pipes carved into the shapes of birds, bears, and human figures. Copper sheets hammered into shining headdresses, obsidian blades, their edges so sharp they could still cut today. These were not everyday tools. They were ceremonial treasures, perhaps used only once before being buried forever with the dead. Mound City may have been a central gathering place for funerals where people from across the region brought their dead to be honored. Imagine hundreds of travelers arriving by canoe, their vessels pulled onto the banks of the Scioto, the air alive with chanting and the steady beat of drums. For the Hopewell, rivers were not barriers, they were highways. A canoe could carry you hundreds of miles and connect you to cultures far beyond Ohio. This is why we find Hopewell artifacts made from materials that came from incredible distances. Mica from the Appalachians, shells from the Gulf Coast, silver from Canada, and grizzly bear teeth from the Rocky Mountains. The rivers brought these things, and the rivers carried the Hopewell's own creations outward, linking them to a continent-wide network of exchange. Picture the scene, perhaps 1,500 years ago. It is early morning on the Scioto River. Mist curls above the water. A group of canoes glides silently toward Mound City, each carrying people dressed in their finest robes, decorated with feathers and beads. They step onto the shore, carrying bundles wrapped in hides, gifts, offerings, and the remains of their loved ones. They enter through the northern gate, walking slowly, their path lined with onlookers holding branches of cedar and pine. Ahead, a mound rises, fresh earth piled high in a perfect arc. A fire burns nearby, the smoke carrying prayers upward. For the Hopewell, this was not just a burial. It was a reunion with ancestors, with the land, and with the spirits of the water and sky. From Marietta to Mound City, the river gateways of Ohio were places where worlds met, the living and the dead, the earth and the heavens, the people of the valley and the people from distant lands. But not all of the Hopewell's creations were vast cities of earth. Some stood alone, silent sentinels in the hills and valleys, built to mark sacred ground in solitude. In our final part, we will journey to those lonely places and see how the Hopewell and those who came after left their mark on the quiet corners of Ohio. Solitary sentinels, not all monuments rise in cities of earth and ceremony. Some stand alone, far from the great circles and octagons, silent, patient, watching over the land for centuries. These are the solitary sentinels of the mound-building cultures. In southern Ohio, near the village of Chillicothe, a narrow ridge runs high above the valley floor. Here lies the Spruce Hill Earthworks, a great stone enclosure unlike anything else in the Hopewell world. Yes, stone. While most Hopewell earthworks were made of soil, Spruce Hill's walls are built from millions of flat sandstone slabs, stacked without mortar, stretching for nearly 2.5 miles around the ridge's summit. Some believe it was a ceremonial gathering place, perhaps used during astronomical events, much like the Newark Octagon. Others think it may have been a place of refuge, though no battles are recorded here. What is certain is that the view from its walls is breathtaking. On a clear day, you can see miles in every direction: the forests, the rivers, the rolling hills. Standing here, it's easy to imagine why the Hopewell chose this place. It feels closer to the sky. Far to the south, along Brush Creek, rises another solitary marvel, the Fort Hill Earthworks. The name is misleading. This was not a fort in the European sense. It is a massive earthen wall that follows the contours of a flat hilltop, enclosing more than 35 acres. The only entrances are narrow gaps that may have been ceremonial gateways. Inside, the forest grows deep and quiet. Sunlight filters through the leaves, the air heavy with the scent of earth and moss. It is a place that still feels set apart from the world outside. Archaeologists believe Fort Hill was a sacred enclosure, perhaps a place where only certain members of the community were allowed to enter, a place of vision quests or seasonal rites. And then there is the Wolf Plains Group, a collection of low mounds and circles outside Athens, Ohio. Smaller than Newark or Marietta, but laid out with the same precision, these earthworks were once part of a ceremonial complex. Over time, farming and development have erased much of it, but from the air, its ghostly outlines can still be traced. Even in their diminished state, they remind us of the Hopewell's reach, how their designs touched valleys, ridges, and river plains across the state. But the story of Ohio's mounds does not end with the Hopewell. Centuries after their time, other peoples came: the Fort Ancient culture, and later, the Shawnee and other native nations. Some built new earthworks, others repurposed the old ones, holding ceremonies atop the mounds of their ancestors. The Great Serpent Mound, for example, may have been built in stages by different cultures across hundreds of years. It is not the monument of a single moment in history, but a living symbol, reshaped by each generation that honored it. Today, many of these places are preserved as parks and heritage sites. Others hide in plain sight in farm fields, behind schools, in patches of woods where most people never think to look. They are quieter now. No drums, no fires. Only the wind through the grass, the call of a crow overhead. But if you stand still and listen, you might hear something. A whisper, carried through the centuries, of people who read the sky like a book, who shaped the land with patience and precision, who saw the rivers as pathways to the soul, and who believed that the earth itself could hold the stories of the people forever. The mounds are not ruins. They are not forgotten. They are reminders of connection, of ceremony, and of the power of human imagination. The Hopewell and their ancestors did not build for glory. They built for meaning. And in the curves of a serpent, the shadow of a circle, the rise of a grassy hill, their meaning is still here, waiting for us.